shoe is better to hoop in? The Jordan Zoom Separate or the Jordan Zion 1? Today we're putting these two new Jordan basketball shoes head to head to see how they compare, but really quick, if this is your first time checking us out, feel free to drop a follow or subscribe wherever you're watching and give this video a like. We would greatly appreciate that. So starting off with the box and the price, there really isn't much to speak of on the Jordan Zoom Separate box. These just get a basic black Jordan box, so you'd see any Jordan 1 mid or low come in, and then nothing really too special on the Jordan Zion 1 box either. These just get like a split black and white box with some Zion text on both sides. But as for pricing, the Jordan Zoom Separate is only retailing for $110, definitely landing them on the more affordable side, and the Zion ones are right above them at $120 for retail, which isn't a bad starting price for a shoe line. So that's definitely nice on both of these models. So looking at the appearance for these shoes and starting off with the colorways, today we're looking at the Jordan Zoom Separate black multicolored versus the Jordan Zion 1 Project Z. So for this Jordan Zoom Separate model, this is more of like a simple design, just like as far as the details, but something really cool about this shoe is it's actually inspired by Luka Doncic's patented just like step back shot that he uses in the NBA. And he is a rising star who did sign with Jordan Brand a little bit over a year ago. It's probably coming up on 2, so I think it's about time dude got his own shoe by now, but apparently this is all we have to work with until that happens. So for the appearance on these, this colorway is going to get like a black and white combo on the upper, which isn't a bad look. You're also going to get some Jordan Brand performance text that shows up on the inside of that upper, and then some Nike Air text is going to be built into the midsole around on the heel of the shoe. And the multicolored outsole, that is kind of where this colorway name comes from. It is going to be a little bit similar to the Jordan Zion 1 Noah that was actually designed by Zion's younger brother. So and the details like on the tongue, it kind of follows suit just with everything else on the rest of the shoe. It's pretty basic with just that Jumpman logo kind of off to the side there. So like I was saying, just nothing too unique about this model, but it's still not going to be bad for $110. But now switching it over to look at the Zion 1s. This is Zion's first signature shoe with Jordan Brand, and I honestly think they came out really well. On the side of the upper, you'll see like a black line that breaks up the colors on the front and like the back of the shoe. And that line is actually meant to resemble a Z, which is of course the first initial in his name. So that's a cool minor detail there that they added. And then along the heel, you're going to get that same Zion text that shows up from the box. And I just like the font that they used there. I think it's a pretty cool look. And you're gonna get like a mismatched like tongue setup with the Jumpman logo is going to be on the right shoe, followed by Zion's player logo on the left. And then the last piece that I'll finally touch on here is, Zion was big into like superheroes and stuff like that growing up. So on the tongue, it kind of like flares out on the sides. It's meant to resemble like a cape. So, there's a lot of like small personal pieces that they put on this shoe that, I'm just kind of a big fan of. But, honestly, I think both of these shoes came out pretty well. But now let's go ahead and see how they hold up on the court. For materials and support, you have a few different types of textiles that make up the upper on this Jordan Zoom Separate model. The white around the toe box is pretty soft. It's sort of like almost a fabric feel, and most of the upper is going to be thin, which does make me wonder a little bit just about how these are going to hold up for durability. But for ventilation, these are going to allow your foot to breathe easily, which is going to be nice. And then for support, around the heel, you get a little bit more of a firm feel, which just gives you a nice feeling of good ankle security. And the Jordan Zoom Separate also has like the tongue kind of built into a supportive wing, kind of along the middle of the shoe. And the upper is pretty thin, but not like to the point that it moves around on any of those like hard movements and stuff like that. And you also do have an outrigger to kind of give you a little bit of a wider base. So, that is something that I like on that model. And then now looking at the Zion 1s, I was actually a little bit surprised at just how thin the upper feels for Zion's first shoe. Just to be honest. If you know who Zion is, and what he looks like and what he plays like, I'm just a little bit surprised they didn't throw like some straps on here to like, reinforce the upper a little bit more. Just basically, it's basically going to be some like textiles with more of like kind of suede-like feel almost to that black piece kind of around the toe, even though, I don't think all Zions had that feeling, but the thin upper, at least it's not going to affect the support on these. The Zion 1 does have a noticeable outrigger that almost just looks like a wing, just like hanging off from the side of the shoe. And that's going to act as a brace to kind of keep your foot within the design and just give you some better balance too. So I feel like that's always almost on there just because of that blowout that he had whenever he was on Duke, playing in like the PG 2.5s, I think it was in college. He just like split right out from the side of that shoe. But Jordan Brand has made it a point to create and just like offer some lighter basketball shoes over the past few years. So like the two models we have today, the Jordan Zoom Separate's only going to weigh 436 grams for a size 10.5, which is pretty light. And the Zion 1s are going to be even lighter than that at only 396 grams for the same size. So both of these shoes are light to play in, especially the Zion, so I did like that. So now getting into more of the materials and the performance side, I'll start off with the cushioning first. So the Jordan Zoom Separate is going to have a Zoom Air unit positioned under the forefoot. You can actually see it marked out on that midsole there where the unit says, Air on that text. And that's where a lot of the softness is going to come from. From what I felt, it's definitely good. It didn't really blow me away, but it still does offer a nice on-court feel just whenever you're landing from jumps and stuff like that. And for $110, I just honestly wasn't sure what I was going to get, but I was actually pretty surprised in a good way. And now looking at the Zion 1s, these are going to get a full-length Air Strobel unit that is stitched directly into the upper. It's going to sit right underneath your foot for just a cloud-like feel. And you have an additional energy returning Zoom Air unit also stacked underneath the forefoot for an extra burst and responsiveness. And these do have a really nice and springy feel. It doesn't seem like there's a weakness in the heel on these either, even with most of the cushioning kind of being focused in the front half of the shoe. So definitely a good start to Zion's line. And both of these shoes have a balanced feel to them just as far as cushioning goes. So to finish off with traction, the Jordan Zoom Separate has sort of a unique traction pattern. The inside oval there actually sticks out from the design a little bit, but those arrows in the inside there are going to handle most of your side-to-side coverage, and then the rest of the pattern does most of your front-to-back movements. But if you look at the lines, you can kind of see how they're set up to handle different cuts specifically depending on what way they're angled. But the traction on these actually turned out to be really solid. They do have more grip than I was expecting, and they didn't really have me sliding on any of my moves, which was nice. But now switching it over to the Zion 1s, this is his first shoe, so it will be kind of interesting to see what they kind of do to tweak it going forward, because I'm not really in love with how the traction plays here. But it's definitely still a playable model. It holds up pretty well in my opinion. It's just not quite as grippy as I would like them to be. But to finish off with sizing, I did go true to size on both of these shoes, and that did work out for me. Both shoes are regularly wide, but maybe the Zion 1's just slightly more narrow than the Separate. So for the final ratings and starting off with the appearance, I'm bigger into what Zion has going into with his details on his first shoe than the more simplified Jordan Zoom Separate look. So I am going to start off going with the Zion 1. For cushioning, these do have a really similar feel between these two models. It is pretty well balanced on both, even with the bulk of the cushioning coming in the front of the shoe, in the forefoot. They don't lack comfort in the heel either on either of these models. Neither one's going to blow me away with the crazy soft feel, so I'm just going to go with a tie here. For the materials, both shoes get some pretty thin materials that go into making up that upper design with no additional pieces to speak of, so I'm just going to keep that section as a tie. And for the support, I'm actually going to stick with that tie section again, or at least a tie within this section, because both shoes do have a pretty noticeable outrigger on the side to kind of help anchor your foot. And then for the traction, I am actually going to side with the Jordan Zoom Separate. They just have a little bit more consistency, just on different courts. And the Zion 1s, they do struggle on some dustier courts, it seems like. So I'm actually going to end up going with the Jordan Zoom Separate as the slightly better shoe to hoop in. It's actually shocked me a lot whenever I was comparing these shoes, just the similarities between these two models on how they felt across the upper. They're both going to have that outrigger. The cushion is matched pretty similar between these two models. Really the only reason I went with the Zoom Separate is going to be due to the traction, because everything else about the Zion 1 I like just as much, or even a little bit better whenever it comes to just the appearance. But honestly, this Jordan Zoom Separate shoe, it came out really nice, especially for the low retail price. Thank you guys for taking some time to watch. If you want to buy the Jordan Zoom Separate, just click the link on the screen, or we have links down below or in our bio for both the shoes, so feel free to check that out. But until next review, I'm Landon from Shoewear. Peace.